Ask the Podcast Coach for June 1st, 2019.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that fun-filled music that means it's Saturday morning. It's 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. If you want to join us, you can simply come over to askthepodcastcoach.com/live. If you want to jump on in, it's askthepodcastcoach.com/join. And speaking of joining me right over there is the one and only, you know him, you love him. Don't be fooled by cheap imitations. Jim Collison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Happy June 1st.
Isn't that weird?
When did that happen?
Yeah. I was like, wait a minute. That
Holy
means
cow.
we're beginning, like we're at like the halfway point of 2019. I'm like,
I know. Well, not quite. At the end of the month, it'll be officially the halfway. But I do want to thank everyone who wished me a happy birthday last weekend. It was nice. I took kind of the whole weekend off. No, ask the podcast coach, and appreciate those who sent me nice greetings. So thank you.
yeah, it was, I was down in Georgia. If you are 2 hours in from the coast on Georgia, I just refer to that as hell. It was like 97 degrees and 400% humidity. And my cousin is an Army brat. He's a chaplain in the Army. And yet his troop or whatever that he chaplains to are Army Rangers and stuff. So he's jumping out of helicopters and he's like, don't mess with my cousin. He will mess you up. But he said, yeah, he's lived everywhere. And he goes, Georgia is like, he goes, yeah, he's like, Louisiana, I've been there, but it was a lot of fun. So
How was graduation? That you were out for graduation, right?
I was out for graduation. It was kind of weird. It was number one, because it was high school. And I swear there's a little difference. There's a difference between high school and college. A lot more grand poobahing, shall we say, a lot of more traditional, like in college, they have a big stick with some sort of thing that you have to come and plant, and it gets its own spotlight. And like, here's the blah, 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 the mast or whatever it is.
Right.
High school, he just walked in, and we were in the James Brown something arena, because it was in Augusta.
Oh.
It's hard. That's the other thing. Every time somebody said Augusta, we had to say Augusta, the whole Caddyshack thing. So
Cinderella story.
The Cinderella story. So it was fun. And it's weird because it's my little cousin who's not little anymore. And it was his oldest son, who was, by the way, phenomenal kid, like just beyond, because we were playing guitars and he also plays, but he had a house full of teenagers, of which some were female. And he actually came in and played guitars with us. And he said, well, I can see my friends anytime. He goes, you guys drove here from Ohio. You're driving back tomorrow. And we're like, his mom's like, there you go. That's my boy. Good choice. So it was very, very cool. And he's already got his college set and the whole 9 yards. So yeah. And it was, for me, I don't know what emotion it was, because I smiled big, but I almost cried when I watched a bunch of high school kids throw their hats in the air. Because I was like, oh, look at them all filled with hope before, reality just comes.
They just completed the easiest thing in their life.
Yeah. Just before reality comes and just smashes them in the face. It'll be great fun.
Super great.
But hey, the big news this week, it is official. I thought I had a link for this. Apple is officially going to shut down iTunes.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah.
About time, right?
Yeah, and I was like, holy cow. Now here's the
Dave, I have not heard anybody complain about this. This is the amazing thing. Like, usually when these kinds of we have been asking that iTunes either get fixed or just do something different, and they're finally doing it, right? They're going to break it up into several different apps. It kind of makes more sense. The Windows version of iTunes is awful.
Yeah.
And so but usually there's that one holdout or two who was like, blah, blah, this is the end. I haven't seen that yet. Have you seen anybody kind of freak out?
Yeah, the only thing that I use iTunes for occasionally is to see what feed they're looking at. And you can get that from other locations. So there are other tools for that. But other than that, I absolutely hate iTunes software. It's old, it's slow, it's clunky. And from what I understand, they're now going to separate it into music, podcasts, and I believe movies. I'd have to go look at my own link that I just put. But they're breaking it into different things. The big question is going to be, and it would be really stupid if they didn't, because everything's like, hey, on the next version of Mac OS, blah, 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 blah. And we're like, and Windows people, are Windows people gonna, That would be
well. They've never. I mean, the app for Windows has always been a cluster.
Yeah.
Like it's always been bad. And in the early years, I couldn't prove this, but in the early years, that was on purpose. Like,
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was just to spite Microsoft, and that's okay. Like, but it's never really ever been very good. So, I actually think, I hear very rarely anybody even using it anymore. I mean, we used to have to sync. Who was it? Was it Mike Dell maybe, who said something about remembering the days when we had to sync our iPods? I think it was Todd actually in a post. And yeah, that's the way it used to be. But now I did a presentation yesterday at work. A bunch of folks were coming in for training, and I said, "Hey, you should be listening to our podcasts." And I plugged my phone in via an HDMI. You know, I got the HDMI dongle for my phone, plugged it in, and I just right on the screen, I just podcast. And of course, I mean, I set it up so all of our podcasts would be the very first thing they see. And so, you know, the Gallup podcast and Call the Coach and Theme Thursday, and they were all there. And you can subscribe right here. That's the first time I've gone into a place and actually used a screen. You know, sometimes you take the phone out and you walk them through it, you know, on it, go subscribe. I was like, why am I not just plugging my phone into the projector, or in this case, into the big, we have a big screen setup in there. But so, yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, your phone is
iPhone.
Yeah. So yeah. I never knew there was an HDMI dongle for that.
It's like $1 million, just to be honest. So the phone is $7 and then the dongle is $1,700. So, no, just a little white dongle, and it's got HDMI on the bottom. You just plug it in, and instantly, you don't have to say mirror or extend. Yeah. I know I'm making fun of Windows. You just plug it in, it worked. Yeah. Although you got to be careful. All my notifications were also popping up as I was doing the presentation. Yeah.
It's the wrong time to get a sexting. You're like,
honey, Sarah, don't send those things. But it was cool to just be able to, show people how to podcast. Also brought up Facebook page for the group and said, hey, join us on our Facebook. And I require everyone request, keeps the spammers out for the most part. We still get them, but by the time I got out into the lobby, I had 8 people already registered. And so I used to go in there with a laptop and do this, but I think anymore, Dave, it's got to be phone first for everything. We always, I think we have to think phone first for everything.
Well, the nice thing about it is, in theory, depending on the cable, you could sit there and walk around with your phone and do your presentation instead of having a little wireless clicker, you know, depending again on how long the cable was, you know. But
phones shut off a little too easy, and then you got to re-authenticate. So you have to really extend, if you're going to do it that way, you really got to extend that screen time. So that's the one drawback to using a phone in a presentation is they because of power, they just turn off more frequently and it's not hard to turn them back on, but it's a little jarring.
Yeah. You have to sit there and go, oops. Daniel saying most likely they're going to move the stuff to the browser. That would fix it. If you think about it, then you don't have to worry about PC and Mac and that whole 9 yards. So that could be fun to watch. And I just realized that for those of you that just heard a ding on the recording, Dave forgot to close or just mute his Slack. I love Slack, and I really need the notifications during the day. I just don't need them during Ask the Podcast.
The Mackie board that I have has a USB pass-through, and sometimes when I'm wanting to play music or something for somebody on the other side, or I'm wanting to play a clip on the other side, you can push that USB pass-through. Works great for podcasting too. Another way to get audio into your podcast. But if you forget to undo that, and there's alert notifications coming in, Facebook is the worst. You know, that dong, that comes in, and you're like, oh, and you hear it, and you're like, oh, you ignore it because you hear them anyways while you're podcasting. Right. But then you forget, oh, I've got that going through. Very maddening when you get a whole podcast done, and then you hear a few of those. You're like,
the one that really got me, I was doing an episode of the Podcast Rodeo Show. So this is where I listen to the beginning of people's shows and give them my opinion. And this guy kept having his phone was not on mute. So I kept hearing the ding. And every time I grab my phone, I'm like, wait, there's no text message, and talking along, ding. And all of a sudden I went, well, hold on a second. I went back, played it again, and I heard the ding at the same time. I was like, oh, that's on the recording. So
it's super frustrating. Like or when you have a guest. We were recording. I was recording an episode somewhere last week, and the guest's phone kept going off. And by this time, after doing this for a decade, I don't go through those instructions anymore with the guest. I kind of just assume they're gonna mute all devices. And I said to somebody, I'm hearing alerts. Can we? Oh yeah. But Dave, it's amazing to me. Those guests, they're so focused on the guest experience. They don't even hear their own. They don't hear them. It doesn't. They don't blink. They don't look. Those alerts come through, and they're just so focused. So that's one of those areas I think as a host, we got to help them and just say, hey, can you make sure everything's silenced? And
don't forget to tap your microphones. I was on an interview yesterday, and at the end of the interview, I'm in the text we're using Squadcast. So I'm like, hey, I don't think your microphone's checked, because I didn't want to do an edit point. And at the end, he goes, oh man, I wish you would have made an edit point, because he was using his microphone on his camera. And I was like, I was letting you know in chat. And he's like, oh, I'm on the wrong. It goes, oh, and I was tempted to go, we can do it again, but no, that never happens.
That's maddening, right? New hosts don't hear the difference between this kind of audio and the camera for whatever reason. And I've done interviews where I've been on my camera mic for what we're using something different. I didn't get it switched over. And I'm like, didn't you hear that? I'm like, no, sorry. I'm like, oh, it's so awful. So awful.
Miss Eileen has a question. She says, I use iTunes to add my tags and the show level art. Can I do that on Hindenburg? Well, as a matter of fact, you can't. Oh, what's the deal with this? Sharon Duno. Okay. It's always fun when you, Squadcast has been adding some new stuff. To do that, he said, clicking the share button and nothing's happening. Interesting. Now we're watching a little spinning ball. I believe this is where Squares, whatever this thing that I'm using, StreamYard. Yeah, I have a non-responding in my Chrome thing.
Oh, bummer. Well, it does work. You can do it there.
But yeah, if you go to File and Properties in Hindenburg, you can actually add your stuff. And in the meantime, can I click on Cancel on this and make it go? Ooh, now we have a white screen. The whole screen's going white. So I think we're slowly going to watch, which will be fun to see if I can come back. Yeah, I'm like, all right.
Riveting podcasting.
Yeah. But you were mentioning a guest. I'm just going to ride this out. I have no control. I can't do anything now. The whole Chrome is.
While that's spinning, let me do say I've been using MP3 tag to do that, and I like it. Super simple. The guy is still updating it. There's a paid version if you want to. Well, you can give a donation to the developer. They've never asked me. I never get spammed by them. I get maybe monthly or quarterly updates to it. So that's what I really. That's where I like it. I edit out of Audacity and then drop them into, drop it in there to put the tags on. And it's a good way to keep the tags. For me, they have a copy and paste function. So I can just go in, it gets all that information, copyright, all that stuff that never changes, right? You can just go in, copy, paste. It moves it all into from the previous one to the next one. I change the show number and the title and I'm done. It's a great workflow.
Yeah, I never knew it was there. I think the actual, just so we don't confuse, I think the actual command is copy tag and then paste tag.
Yeah, correct. Yes.
Because I never knew that was there, and you told me about that. I'm like, it's weird because it saves you all of 12 seconds, but it's so cool because if you, like you said, the name never changed, the author never changes. Yeah. All you have to do is change the title and the episode number. And I don't really put a whole lot in the comments besides here's my website. And this is still spinning. It's annoying because I have no control over anything.
Can you get it? Has it completely consumed your system? You're fine here. So
yeah, I'm fine here. I can't highlight any comments. I can barely see the comments. Can I do? No, it's just, so what I might do. I leave and come back?
No, just let it run for a bit.
Just let it run.
While it's running, let me mention this week, we were off last week, but the last Thursday I had my daughter on Home Gadget Geeks. And Sarah my wife had been on, 2 months ago, and it got really good reviews. We got a lot of people. And then my daughter came on, and it just got blown out on the number of tweets and kind of, I got emails back from my audience. I got more emails back this week than I've gotten on any show ever.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it was just super cool. And she did a super good job. It was her first podcast ever. She's a journalist.
Nice.
We talked a little bit about the technology it takes to do college, but Dave, don't underestimate the power of your own family in doing that. I don't know if my boys, I'm not sure they'd want to do this, to be honest with you, but she's really inclined towards this. And so,
dude,
she did a great job.
I'm glad you set this up. Got this text this morning. I don't know what she was doing up at 4:30 in the morning, but it says, "Hey, Uncle Dave, some of my friends and I were looking at maybe starting a Dungeons and Dragons podcast, and I was wondering if you have any tips for us starting out." And I'm like, God. So I have to call her later and go, yeah, I think your uncle can help you out with that.
There's a bunch of really popular D&D podcasts right now, which is hilarious because I played D&D back when I was in like high school in the 80s, right? And it's funny that it's kind of back that way, and they kind of go in trends. But yeah, she watches a 4-hour. Okay. Remember when we talked about not too long, but can't too long, too boring, that one? She watches on YouTube Talking Heads 4 hours all around D&D. This is every Thursday night. That's her gig. And it's another reminder to me, when you found your niche, you can really do anything you want. There are no rules in that. Most people would say, oh my God, and it's 4 hours a week. And they have tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of subscribers to this YouTube channel. 4 hours, wow. Thursday nights. Like, yeah, that doesn't seem like it would make sense, right? They have this incredibly loyal audience. She tries to watch and listen to the whole thing. So
4 hours.
4 hours. 4 hours. Yeah.
That's a little crazy.
It's engagement. Like, when you have found that niche, people will just consume it. That's just what they do. We've said this before. My audience, if I shorten things up, I get notes like, "Hey, like, I counted on you for my commute. What are you doing? Why are you making this shorter? That's dumb." You know, and there's all this conventional advice, oh no, 20 minutes or 15 minutes, or you got to be quick. Don't do any intros. Get right to the point. We say all those things, right? We say all those things. There are some listeners who are like, no. I'm just listening because I need something to listen to. I don't care what you do. You can go as long as you want. I'm going to listen to the whole thing because I'm in a factory and I got earbuds in, or I'm out mowing the lawn and it takes me 2 hours, So, yeah.
It'll be interesting to see. I think that's really going to be one of the things, is to watch the next generation, to see that kind of grew up a little bit with podcasting, or their parents are podcasting. I know Elsie Escobar's kids, she has a Rodecaster, and she just said, I just gave it to them to see if they could figure it out. And they did. Ross has a question, I think, in the chat room. What about radio.com and Libsyn? It's easy. Go to destinations, add radio.com, and you'll start to see some of the new things that are coming down the line in Libsyn, because you'll see where your description, your name, your email, all that stuff that you usually have to type in again, you don't. So it's literally destinations, add radio.com, read it, done. And I will say 98% of the time you're in within a couple hours. There is right now a slight hiccup on their side that occasionally your name will be added and nothing else. In which case, email support@libsyn.com and we'll basically go, hey, radio.com, and they fix it. So, but other than that, it's been going really, really smooth. So,
who the hell is radio.com?
Radio.com is CBS.
Oh, okay.
CBS Radio. And I will say their app is annoying.
It's terrible.
Well, when the only reason I have it is I used to listen to Jim Rome all the time.
Okay.
And for the record, Jim, just so you know, I see where Eileen has a question. I can't read that.
Oh, shoot. Okay. I'll try to read questions for you.
Anyway, so I used to listen to Jim Rome on that, but other than that, I don't really, go over there. iHeart I will listen to occasionally if I'm, listening to something in the morning and I'm going somewhere and I want to listen to it in the shower or whatever. I'll throw on iHeart, but that does not happen a lot. CBS, the only thing I listened to was Jim Rome, and the thing that's annoying, I guess, at least for me, when you start the app, it goes back to the last channel you were on and starts automatically, which for me, now working at Libsyn, people are like, hey, am I in radio.com? Well, now I got to fire it up and search for them and go, yep, here it is. So it's kind of the fact that it's constantly starting the last thing I was in. I'm like, I know there's a setting somewhere that's got to be. I was looking.
Couldn't they just search for themselves on radio?
Oh, dude, I'm here to tell you.
What is that?
Am I in Spotify? Have you gone over and searched?
I don't know. Let's go look.
Yeah,
Let's do it together.
Yeah.
Spotify.com. So, okay. Should I have known, like, it makes sense, radio.com, CBS, right? But I in 5 years of doing this with you, I can't ever remember a moment we've talked about radio.com. I mean, this was weird when Libsyn announced this. I was like, how have I missed this? Why has this not been one of those sites that everybody's been clamoring to be on or be a part of? Do you know? I mean, like, literally, I was like, oh, where did this come from? It's never been, rarely ever been talked about in the podcast communities, unless I'm totally out. Am I out to lunch?
Yeah, yeah. And here's what's weird is it's only in the app. It's not on radio.com, because if you go to that website, holy moly, it's very, I don't know, 1997 ish. Yeah. It's like, I'm sorry, but holy cow.
Well, it was weird when Libsyn made that announcement, and I was like, radio.com, and I'm like, there's a radio.com. And so when I went out and looked at it, all those things, I was like, oh my God, this is kind of awful. Not to listen. It's great that, Spreaker's doing the same thing. They've got this new thing called syndication, right? Where they're helping you out getting some of these things done. And I think it's super awesome, by the way. So I'm not ripping on Libsyn at all for this. I was just surprised. I've never heard of radio.com. And I was like, been doing this a long time. I'm everywhere.
Under the radar?
Like, I am everywhere. I am literally everywhere. And how did this one fly under the radar?
Yeah, it's and while we're talking about that, iHeartRadio, they're working on this, but right now it can take like 2 months to get approved, if not 3 in some cases, to get approved at iHeartRadio. We're not sure. They have told us that they're working on something on the back end, trying to speed things up. But right now, it's because I get that email like once or twice a day. Hey, I submitted to iHeartRadio like back in March, and I'm not in there yet. And you're like, yeah, well, you should be probably soon. But yeah, it's kind of a, and I don't know about you, but every time I see a new destination, I'm like, all right, well, there's another 3% if I'm lucky, and it takes all of 2 seconds to get listed, but I don't get a lot of stuff on iHeart. I don't get a lot of stuff on Stitcher, so.
Yeah. I still think you got to be there. Like, I think that's one of those things you got to make sure it happens. I just wouldn't worry about it too much.
Yeah. And I always get that question. Well, should I? And I'm always like, okay, it's free. It's more exposure. Like, why would you not?
Why wouldn't you? I've said this before, but Shout Engine, I think, is one of them. I get 600 or 700 a year.
Yeah.
And so you go 50 or 60 a month. It's better than a sharp stick in your eye, and it takes me 2 minutes to post them out there, and you never know. You never know where it's going to hit or it's going to take off. That question is showing up a lot in the Facebook groups too. Is do I need to be on Facebook? Do I need to be on YouTube? I saw that question a dozen times, it seemed like this week. Like, do I need to be, hey everybody, do I need to be on YouTube? And I don't know how you shouldn't be on YouTube, just to be honest with you. I mean, get something out there.
Yeah.
You never know that's where that's going to go. I think just from paying attention to what's happening at YouTube is more important than anything else. Like the act of going in there and understanding kind of what they're doing. By the way, YouTube downgraded my video. If you're a live streamer and you're using YouTube as a live stream platform at this point, they went in and made some changes and then downgraded me to not a non-HD. To give me, there's a latency settings and the setup in there now. And they were like, hey, do you want a lot of latency but better video, or less latency and worse video? Yeah, there we go. And they just changed it automatically for me. So I was not getting HD video out of YouTube anymore for the rendered version. And I'm like, hey, no notice. No, okay, that's not fair, because it could be in my YouTube email box that I send to auto delete. But that being said, they could have told me. So that I had to dig in and find, they added these legacy settings. So I think it's important to be on those platforms just so you kind of know what's kind of happening, where things are going with it. A lot of changes over there too.
I'm cheating. I changed the the settings on my monitor so I can read the chat.
Oh, good. I don't think we've seen any questions yet so far.
No, I did see somebody took my baby steps course, schoolofpodcasting.com/baby steps. I do know that's one of the things on my list of things to do today. I have that set up to send you like every day you get a new little video to kind of walk you through that. And the first day you get nothing. I need to set it up so that when you sign up, like you get one on day one and it's like, it starts after that. So oopsie on that. Thank you, by the way, to Daniel J. Lewis, who pointed that out to me. Cause I don't know if you know this, but your baby step thing is a little like late starting up. Jim, you were talking about guests, I don't know, 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
We did have a question from, this is on a Facebook group, so it's not a question sent to us. I saw this and went, this is an interesting question. He says, this is Joe Persia, I'm going to say. I'm curious, what do you think makes for a great podcast guest? I've only been on less than 25 shows or so, but I've noticed that some end way better than others. Would love your expert feedback. So what do you think makes a good guest?
That's interesting. What makes a good guest? Let me ask the question back to you, Dave. Are we thinking about what kind of guest should I have on that will maximize the promotion of my content, or what kind of guest can I have on that will actually maximize the content of my podcast? You know, because I think it can matter. I also think you can have a guest that you catch on a bad day, and it's just not as great, right? I mean, this is, I think, where quantity over quality is what you're shooting for. You've got to just get a bunch of people and have them on. It's also really good practice for your interviewing skills to just interview a bunch of people. And so, I don't think this goes with a question I've seen a lot lately too in the Facebook groups. How do we feel about not playing an interview that went poorly?
That is,
what do you do? Do you call that guest and go, that wasn't as good as I was hoping for? And actually, that's, I think, the answer. I think even though you've done it, you get back with the guest and just be honest. Like, hey, this wasn't great. Can we do it again?
Yeah, that's where I go. It's not the guest. I don't blame the guest on that one. I blame you. Now, granted, but to me, I want to go, what was your process of vetting that guest? Did you do any kind of pre-interview? Did you go listen to them on other interviews? Like, how did this person get to your audience? Because you're the goalkeeper, and either A, you didn't know their story, or because I know you just said what you said, quantity.
I think it's quantity over quality.
See, I'm the direct opposite.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
I'm because to me, I actually had some guy this week that contacted me. He said, "Hey, I was talking to Matthew Passy. Matthew said I should reach out to you." I said, "Oh, you must have a cool Because of My Podcast store." And he goes, "Actually, I kind of do." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." I said, "But here's the deal. I don't know you." I said, "So here's my little rule. Here's my scheduling link. See if there's anything that works for you." I said, "But I only say this to people I don't know. A, can you send me a link to where you've been interviewed before? And B, because I don't know you, I reserve the right to not publish our recording." I said, "If you're fine with that, here's my scheduling link." And that's just the way I'm going to handle it. Now, and I felt really awkward saying it, but it was like, I'm not letting you get to my audience if, and I could have reached out to Matthew and said, "Hey, what's the deal on this guy?" Because you don't know, but that's the way I'm handling it, at least. So.
Yeah, no, and I get it. I get what you're saying. I do. I love this kind of debate on it because I think for me, there's been some folks where my instincts have been like, and then I had them on and they were amazing. And you're like,
yeah.
Oh, if I'd have listened to my gut on this, I wouldn't have had it. Is there, I don't know if there's a right answer actually between what we're saying, or maybe it's a combination of both.
Both. Yeah. Yeah. Cause you need the quantity to get good at it. So it's
the pre-call though is you mentioned this. The pre-call is such an important part. Do something where they know they're not being recorded, but just have a conversation with them. You're going to find out a lot about, and don't commit to the podcast until after you've had that pre-call. So they're like, "Hey, I want to be on your podcast." Okay. I require a pre-call before I make any kind of decisions. Can we just get together and I need 15 minutes of your time? Then after the call, you can get back with them and say, "No, I'm not really interested." That's really hard to do, by the way, but
it is. That's one of the things I've kind of noticed and I almost hate to keep mentioning this because I'm worried about overhyping it. I'm doing a lot of research on interviews and how to do an interview and tips and tricks and things like that. And one of the things is there are going to be times when you have to put on your big boy or your big girl pants and have an adult conversation and go, no. And I'm like, boy, that's a tough one. So
it's super hard. It's super hard. You feel like you've got somebody's time. You sit down and do the interview. You're taking on their excitement because they're like, hey, I did this interview thing, and then you're like, yeah, that wasn't really that good. I'm not gonna take it. I have honestly never done that, so I can't be one to, and I've never faked it. Like, oh, we lost the audio wasn't good. I have had the audio wasn't good conversations where it didn't get recorded for some reason, or it didn't. It was the audio was bad, but I've never said nah, not good enough. I usually think, I don't know, maybe it's because I vet a little bit, like you're saying. Maybe I vet in advance, so I just haven't had to have that conversation with somebody. But I do like. I mean, I've gotten better at interviewing people because I've done so many interviews.
Yeah.
So it's hard to do that without doing it.
I have done the narrative style. I've taken a bad interview and it wasn't bad. I explained to the person, this is why you're here. And we talked a little bit about that. And then they went into a whole big section that I didn't want to talk about. And that just went right on the editing floor. I'm like, nope, my audience isn't going to find any value in that. So I took the little bit that was left and kind of told a story and put his or her clips in there. So it worked out okay. So
can you do questions yet?
No, okay. I'm totally, and I also can't share my screen to say thank you to our awesome supporters.
Oh, well, we'll just have to mention them. Most of them probably listen via anyways.
Yeah.
There's a question out there. This is a huge problem I'm facing. I have a podcast and I follow a theme closely. One day I make a slight off-topic episode and the downloads explode. Not really a problem, but yeah. How should I take that? Change course? So Dave, you're podcasting about green widgets. One day you mention a red widget and it explodes, right? What do you do? Do you all of a sudden shift course and become a red widget podcaster? Or what do you do?
I would check my stats to see if there's anything I can see. Where are these downloads coming from? Maybe it's a different country or a different app, things like that. I have Google Analytics on my website, see if there's anything I can figure out. So I'm trying to figure out why did these go up?
Right.
And then from there, I don't know if I would completely change course, but I might mention red widgets again and see, what happens. But I had a person I was helping with, they were doing a show about churchy stuff, for lack of a better phrase. And the one time he finally hit on something like growing your congregation that is college aged, and that went through the roof, like just through the roof. And so I said, I'm going to take that as that's something your audience wants to talk about. I said, you might want to expand on that a bit more. That would be the other thing I would look at the title of your of that episode, because sometimes a really good title will just make things go bonkers.
Yeah. So Ross and I this morning we're working a little bit together. He's republishing a episode I did with him last year sometime, and there's a lot of strength stuff embedded in it. Well, next week is the Clifton Strength Summit here in Omaha. I have 1,500 people coming, and there's tons of excitement around that. And chances are, if you put Clifton Strengths into something right now, it's not like it's that famous, but it may rank a little bit better. You may have that where you hit it on right in the sweet spot, right in that moment, right when people were looking for it, or it's a hot search topic, or it shows up somewhere. I wouldn't start changing the whole course to get there, but like you said, I may start sprinkling it in, and you might find out like, oh, this is actually a popular topic with the people that I'm listening to. One time, right? We say in data, right? 1's a point, 2's a line, 3's a trend. So I wouldn't make any decisions until I have 3 data points and some kind of trend on that. One show, not enough, just a point.
Now, here's the fun part. There are times, I'll give a great example. I hope Dave Jackson is seen as Mr. It's not the tech guy. That is one of the things I say a lot of. And yet
that's what you have me for.
Yeah, but exactly. But there are times when Dave will do a microphone shootout. Well, Dave, if it doesn't really matter what microphone you have, as long as you have a decent one, why are you doing microphone shoot? Because people love those things.
They do.
So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to give you what my audience wants because you guys go nuts over, ooh, it's shiny and blinky. And,
we have in Clifton Strengths, we have this balconies and basements idea that we talk about all the time. And we're getting away from it because it's not really great. I mean, it's okay, but we've got we want to say it in other ways and stuff, but we cannot get people to stop saying balconies and basements. They love that concept of it. These coaches, so whenever we write a blog post, or the blog posts we've written about it in the past do extremely well, because guess what people are searching for? So they're searching for balconies and basements. So when you're thinking about that's the SEO, dilemma that you have here. When you think about how you're titling your podcast, you should be thinking about what are people searching for? Because the title's the only thing that matters anymore in SEO for the most part. And how you phrase your title matters. So that's the thing. Like, you might have looked at the title of that podcast that you put out and Google it and see, if you put 3 letters in and it auto fills that title, like, you may be onto something from an SEO perspective.
Well, you brought up search, and I need to start saying this more often. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and now iHeartRadio. The search is horrible. Like, I had somebody yesterday, you typed in the name of their show in iHeart and the show did not come up. He took the link that iHeart gave him, and if you sent that to somebody on email, opens up right in the iHeart app and there's their show. So it's there, it's not showing up in search. And insert Apple, Spotify, iHeart, same thing happens all the time. And everybody's like, well, like, how do I fix this? And the answer is you can't. You can't. Well, what's the name of your show? It's the blah 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 show. Okay, does it say blah 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 show in the title? Yes. Okay. You've got the title right. You've got your author. You've got your description. We're not sure what searches what, but it doesn't show up. And people are like, yeah, but how are people going to find me? And I'm like, there's no answer here. Go. I've mentioned it already to Spotify, and they just kind of went, well, it's the algorithm. And I'm like, yeah, and it blows. And they're like, okay.
They don't care. They don't care. So, that's not their business. That's not their core business.
Yeah. So
they're doing it for free. They don't care.
Yeah. And so I just keep telling people, number one, there's a great study by not Edison, Jacobs Media. 70% of people find shows through word of mouth, and 10% find them by searching. And I'm like, so that's the good news. Don't stress out over this. But in the meantime, put the links on your website and tell your audience to go to your website and subscribe. Daniel, since he's in the chat room, if you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/subscribe and follow, Daniel has already added the radio.com button to his plugin. And that's an easy way to make a really nice looking subscribe page. But I'm just I'm like, quit telling people, find me an Apple Podcast, because here's a fun one. We talked about this on the Podcasters Roundtable. If you type in podcast rodeo show, I don't show up. If you type in the word rodeo, I do. And the answer is, well, why? Because Apple sucks. Search sucks in all apps. And I'm like, there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. And it's just, you have to deal with that. So I did want to jump in. I saw where Illiquity asked, what do people use to make courses? I use Thinkific. Schoolofpodcasting.com/Thinkific. I've also seen Teachable is pretty cool. So schoolofpodcasting.com/Teachable. And the cool thing about those, although I believe you can embed the courses into your website. I really like having, like, if you go to the schoolofpodcasting.com, that's my education site. And then schoolofpodcasting.com is everything free. Because if you're trying to block things on your website, that became quite the headache. And I was using things like Digital Access Pass and all these other fun-filled things. To me, having them separate makes life a whole lot easier. And I see where Daniel, so that's my thought on that. There are tons of them. There's Digital Access Pass, there's Wishlist Member, there's tons of them. But I really, the reason I used Thinkific is I forget what I found, some sort of plugin, and it took me about a week or two, if not more, to make one course because it let me pick the shadow of the color of the curve. It just let me pick all these different things. And I heard the guy from Thinkific on a podcast, and he's an educator. So as opposed to basing it on how cool it is and all the tech, it was like, no, this is facilitated for learning. I went, okay, I like this guy. And I actually made the School of Podcasting in a weekend. I took everything I had and just copied and pasted and re-uploaded it. And it has a built-in but rather basic affiliate program. So that's why I use Thinkific. But I from what I understand, Thinkific or Teachable, you can't go wrong with either one. So
cool.
So
I think Daniel's reference was because it's the podcast rodeo show.
Yeah.
The word podcast is throwing it off.
That's it.
There's a lot with podcast in it, right?
Well, that's one of the things I'm going to bring up to Libsyn. When you sign up at Libsyn, it takes whatever your slug is, which is just for the record, your Libsyn ID, and it puts the word podcast. So if you signed up and it was, the Jim Collison show and your slug was Jim Collison, well, it automatically says the name of your show is Jim Collison, all one word, podcast. And it's kind of in a way that's kind of like, hey, you should change this later because it's all one word. And people will leave the word podcast, which is kind of like saying, hey, I'm going to go watch that, I don't know, 911 TV series kind of thing. We don't really need the word podcast in your podcast. We've kind of figured it out.
Yeah.
And so consequently, there are a lot of shows with the word podcast in it. And same thing with the word the. If you put the word the in there in your search, you're ranking against everybody who has the word the and podcast in their title, which again goes back to our original point, which is search in apps is really horrible.
Yeah. I was really fortunate when I picked Home Gadget Geeks. That has worked out really well for me. Like it defines where and in the home gadgets, that what we're talking about, and it's for geeks. And I just, since I changed to that title, no one's been like, what's that about? No, it's super clear. And it just came across. Dave, before we get too much farther, we should thank those awesome supporters. Let's do that. We don't have visualizations, but let's do it anyway.
I tell you what, because this is the first of the month. Oh. Should we thank everybody next week? And I'll just thank our, okay.
Yeah.
So we do want to thank awesome people like Gred. That's a fun one because there's a big D in front of my name. Greg at debtshepherd.com. Glenn the Geek Hebert, yes, over at horseradionetwork.com. Josh Rivers over at podcastingexperiments.com. Max Truscott up in the skies at aviationnewstalk.com. Shane from spybrary.com. He said, scrolling down, Carrie Bond over at keywestperspective.com/podcast. Ronsley down in Australia at Amplify Media Group. You can find him at mustamplify.com. Carl White at lifeinthecarolinas podcast.com, and Kim Craggy from Toastmasters101.net. And we will thank everybody in 2 weeks, because next week I'll be in Utah.
Nice.
And I'm already set. I'm going to be looking sporty. I got my sporty. This is great for an audio pod. Oh, this is a great look too.
Yeah, it is a good look.
Are
you going hiking? Do you plan to get lost in the desert? Or
no? Actually, the one and only Eliquity, who's in the chat room, is going to be. She said, "Hey, if you're coming to Utah, we're going hiking, and she's gonna show me the mountains and all sorts of."
You might want to check some ID. I don't want you getting murdered out in the middle of the desert, Dave. So don't get lured. I'm just saying, don't get lured.
I had my sister-in-law mention that. She goes, "You do realize your dad almost got killed doing that?" And I'm like, he did. My dad went, he was on the CB. My dad was a fairly large chunk Cherokee Indian and was talking with some woman who was also a Cherokee Indian. And she's like, well, blah, blah, blah. And my dad, being a trusting soul, met her somewhere. I don't think my dad was doing anything naughty in this case, but apparently her boyfriend did. And literally almost like, my dad didn't know where he was. He just stuck a shotgun in his ribs and hit him in the head with his shotgun butt until, my dad got mugged like nobody's business.
Wow.
And my brother had to go get him because it's kind of hard to drive a truck when you're unconscious.
Right.
And my brother said, he went in and goes, he didn't know what day it was. And my dad was always a little left to center from that. We would just be eating at the dinner table and he would just like throw something out there. And we're like, all right. Meanwhile, back at the
Yeah, bring it back. Well, Aliquity, you're on the hook for Dave's safety. Like we're coming after you. If Dave doesn't show up next 2 weeks from now for Ask Podcast Coach,
we know I'm dead somewhere in Utah.
On the hook. I got a really nice note from Glenn, by the way, who's one of your awesome subscribers for my birthday. And that was where he says, listen to the show all the time. And it was just it was one of those, I don't necessarily always get a lot of communication from this audience. I think most of it gets routed to you. But it was great. So Glenn, thanks for listening. And 2, thanks for the nice note. It's you'd be surprised if you're thinking about somebody, a podcaster, let's just put this, if you're thinking about them and you're like, I should write a nice note, do it. Like actually do it. It can change someone's day. That podcaster might be ready to quit. And yes, you're a podcaster. If you're listening to this, chances are you're a podcaster. But if you've got podcasts that you listen to and you really enjoy, you know how much you like it. So get on email, send them a note or her a note and say you appreciate it. It's super great. So get that done. It's really
gas in the tank. We actually had that lead. Wow, what a great lead in. We had somebody put
it's almost like we planned it that way.
I know. This was again in a Facebook group from Graham. He says, my podcast is 3 months old. I've been dealing with the anxiety that comes with watching the numbers. And at times I forget I've only been doing this for a short period of time. How do you cope with stagnating numbers of downloads in the first few months? And that's where if somebody reaches out to Graham, whatever Graham's podcast is, and said, hey, I'm listening, really like that episode on such and such, that can keep him going for months because there are times when you're just like, hello, is this thing on? And if somebody sends an email just to say, hey, that was cool. Thanks so much. Love the show. Keep up the good work. It doesn't have to be War and Peace. Just proof that somebody's listening sometimes can really, I think, put some gas in people's tanks.
That is the huge advantage to recording live. Even if you're not going to take your live recording, and I don't. Our live recording is always what the podcast becomes. Very little editing. But every week when I go live here, and on Thursday nights for Home Gadget Geeks, there's 15 or 30 or whatever of you who are here to interact. And if you're just doing a solo podcast by yourself and you're not, like you said, hello, anybody out there, there, you need some of that feedback. And so I'd encourage folks, even if you're just recording, I know SP does this with a bunch of his podcasts. They're recording live and they still do a ton of editing on it. But they're recording it live to get that kind of get that. I don't know. It also makes you sharper, I think, when you're recording in front of a live audience. So I would not underestimate the fact of let your audience know you're going to record it live. It's not going to be the final version.
Yeah.
And get some of the, get some feedback that way if you're not hearing from people. I've been doing live for 9 years now. And I look forward to it. Thursday nights or Saturday mornings with you guys here. It's pretty great. It's pretty grereat. Well,
the thing I'm going to laugh is when I go back and listen to this, I guarantee you, I said Greg from Debt Shepherd and Glenn the Geek here. I'm umming every time we go through the awesome supporters. All of a sudden I'm like, it's right in front of me. I just got to read it.
Reading, yeah.
And I always laugh at that, and I'm like, well, there's a lovely edit point.
So. It is that there's a good chance to practice that because that's a fixed. Like that's always going to be a fixed commodity. And so you could kind of practice that beforehand. I'm not saying you should, I'm just saying you could. And that'll help take out some of the ums and ahs that are in there because you've gotten, you don't change the order. We read them every month. That can be a pretty well rehearsed.
Yeah. I thought about recording it ahead of time, but that would look stupid if we're live. And I'm like, here I come, and I'm just going to sit here and let's say thanks to our awesome supporters. And I hit a button, and instead of jazz music, we get you hear me.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to be then sitting there with my mouth not moving. And I would think that would be a little weird on a live video.
Not if you had slides.
That's true. If and then I just hit the slides. Then you might be, because then it could be fun. We could have awesome jazz music or whatever, or I could make that a whole big production thing.
Yeah, and behind the scenes, when you watch the big dogs, the ESPN, those guys, and they're doing their podcast and they're recording it, you see all the stuff they're doing, and they have pre-recorded stuff all the time, and they're shuffling papers and looking important and feeling handsome, all those things that they're doing. So I don't think that's would be out of the question, Dave, to record that, play it. We'd be resetting on the backside, but the slides could be going while you're doing it. So yeah, I'd say it's super doable.
Yeah, definitely doable. How are we doing on time? Here's a fun topic. I'm right now, I'm rewriting the book More Podcast Money. And we're going to play a fun game here as soon as I find my own answer. Okay. If I want to bring home $60,000 a year in Ohio, how much money do I need to make?
If you want to bring home 60?
Yeah.
110.
Oh, look at you. Because I didn't think it was going to be that much. It's actually 100. There's a great website that I can't put in the chat room. us.thesalarycalculator.co.uk. And I think that'll take you to a bunch of websites. But here's the fun thing. It says I need to bring home $75,576 to do that, because 20 to 30% is going to go to taxes. But then I contacted somebody who is podcasting full time, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing for life insurance?" And that person said, "Oh, I use Cozy. That's about." Want to guess what life insurance is per month?
No, life or health?
What am I
health
saying?
Insurance.
I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me. Health insurance.
Yeah.
Life insurance is a whole other thing.
It's a ton.
Yeah, it was,
especially here in the U.S. Like, it's the worst here. In the US.
So it's him, his wife, and 2 kids.
400, 500,
$1,700 a month.
God, that's gotten horrible.
Which means you'd have to make $92,885 in gross.
Yeah.
But then that's assuming you're working 40 hours a week, with your schedule just completely filled. And then you go, wait a minute, Dave, aren't you going to Utah? Yeah. Are you taking any vacation days? Oh, wait, you want vacation. So how much vacation do you want? 2 weeks. Oh, okay. Well, that means you have to make, and then my number goes up to $101,969 if you want to make $60,000 a year, which rounds out to $49 an hour if you're working 40 hours a week. But that's where people don't plan on that. They say, okay, great, I'm working 40 hours a week, but if I'm Mr. Solopreneur, then you forget that there's that whole, there's doing the service. Let's say I'm an audio editor. There's doing that, but then there's also things like today I get to close my month. I need to pay my affiliates. I need to do all this other paperwork stuff and kind of see, hey, what's working here? Well, that's the part you don't think about. And that's why most entrepreneurs never work 40 hours a week, because there's the part of actually doing your service, your consulting, whatever you're doing. And then there's the whole, I have to run my business and do the tax thing and the blah, blah, blah. And so that was, I don't know if that's going to make it into the book, because it's not really about like how to make money.
Should.
Yeah.
But I think it should. I think it should. I think a lot of people think it's easier than it is to be an entrepreneur. Yeah. And Mike Howard in the chat room says, don't forget about saving for retirement. I mean,
there you go.
There's going to be nobody there. By the way, if you want to shock and you're working for an employer and you're paying less than $1,700 a month for health insurance, ask your employer what their portion of your health insurance that they pay. You may be pleasantly surprised how much that is. I mean, it can be ridiculous. Yeah. They've sheltered you from it, and you're getting, you're paying maybe 5 or 10% of that premium, and they're paying the other 90%. You may have a greater appreciation, or just maybe alarmed, especially here in the U.S., how much healthcare is costing. So but Dave, many podcasters I always say, they wish they could podcast for a living, and I'm going to make a living out of this. Yikes. Being an entrepreneur and on your own, that's way more expensive than you think. In the final minutes here, that before we go, I do want to say, as a podcaster and working as a podcaster for an employer, this Wednesday, I'm going to get the opportunity. 2 years ago, I got a chance to do this. We're structuring a little bit different, but we're going to podcast in front of 400 people live. We've booked the room, sold it out, sort of. We've offered it. It's available. We're going to live stream it as well for our folks who couldn't come to the conference, or are around the world. We're going to live stream it as well. We have about 100 folks who signed up for that to this point. But yeah, we're doing a live style podcast from a stage, 400 people. So it'll be a ton of fun to be able to do that. What's super cool, right, is that's because of my podcast. So, I wouldn't get a chance to do this if we hadn't started podcasting there in the first place. And the Tuesday morning, 7 a.m. Central, we'll launch a brand new Gallup podcast, which is super cool. I've gotten to kind of play an executive producer role. That sounds way more important than it is. But thank you. But yeah, we're I think on our 7th podcast now. I am trying to compete with NPR. Like that's my goal. So unseat NPR. And so we're launching a brand new podcast on Tuesday. It's kind of fun you kind of forget how much work it takes to launch. Now, if you think launching a podcast by yourself is hard, imagine launching it with 9 or 10 very strong, opinionated people on the other side. Because, we have another host. I've got another producer. I've got people in charge of the marketing. I've got people in charge of the vendor. We have to get the vendor's approval because it's a partnered podcast with Knight Foundation. And so we got to get their approval on things. And so it's taken us 60 days just to get the first one launched. And fortunately, we have a few in the can behind it. So we'll be ready to go once it goes out. But if you think producing your podcast by yourself is hard, and I'm not complaining about this, but just get another company involved and have to get approvals, and it can take a lot longer. So 2 big things, as podcasting is part of my job at Gallup. 2 really big events coming up this week, so it'll be a fun week for sure.
Is this the event? I know we had that one picture of you the one year where you were on center stage, and it's like this whole auditorium,
literally center stage, light coming down, pretty surreal. It was That's
cool.
I didn't think I was ever going to top that. A smaller crowd this time, 400 versus 1,000, but this will be, we're having rock music playing when they come in. We're going to, so it's going to be kind of a rock concert as opposed to a rehearsed podcast. So anyways, Dave, because of my podcast, these kinds of cool things get to happen, and you can do this at work. That's the thing. If you're currently employed, you don't have to quit your job. You might be able to be a podcaster at work.
Well, that's the other cool thing, is not that you needed it, but talk about job security. Is there anybody else that could do the podcast if you got hit by a bus?
Well, I am training others. Like, we do have a succession plan because I want that. That's I don't want necessarily them to be screwed if something happened to me.
Right.
So I have been training other people to fill in the aspects of the job. But that being said, I love what I do, and Gallup has been very, very gracious in allowing me to experiment with these different methods, and we're refining them now even as we speak. How do we brand it? What kind of things do we do? We just had a big, long discussion. The current album art has my picture on it, and we're getting ready to move our site from its own site onto Gallup.com. That's another big thing that's going to happen this year. And they were like, yeah, we're going to strip your picture off. And I was like, actually, I'm totally okay with it. But it's those kinds of things that have to be considered when you're podcasting in the enterprise.
Yeah, you never know. So, well, speaking of your podcasts, what was on your last episode?
Yeah, we spent a little time talking about Windows 10 1903. So it is finally here. Your PCs are going to update in the next couple of weeks to it. We've got kind of the top 10 features that are coming with it and some things to watch out for. So theaverageguy.tv.
Here's what's funny, because I guess I could open it up in Firefox. I can't remember what was on the last episode of the School of Podcasting, and I'm like, I'll just go. Oh no, I can't open up another tab. He said, running over quickly to go to the finished folder of the School of Podcasting. Episode 672 was the biggest pain in creating your podcast.
Oh, yeah.
So I was surprised that editing wasn't in there. A lot of show notes. People hate show notes, but check that out at schoolofpodcasting.com/672. Just a reminder, no podcast next week. Dave will be getting sunburned in Utah. I'm really looking forward to this trip, not just for the hiking, but just it's a single track event, UtahPodcastSummit.com. If you're anywhere in the neighborhood, or if you're there, definitely come and kick me in the shin or something of that nature to get my attention. I would love to meet you. So we will be back on the 15th. Is that right? Yes, we'll be back on Saturday the 15th, 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. Stick around for some post show. This is really bugging me, the fact that I can't.
Who made that theme? The music.
This is from a CD I bought at.
It's really good.
Yeah,
like I really like that. I really like that.
Oh, there goes the router. That was well done.
There goes. So you might just get disconnected anyways. If you drop, we'll know where you went.
I can't remember the name of the company, but it's from Studio Cuts, CUTZ. It's called Power Funk. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 songs on here. And they all have a 15, 30, one of them you've probably heard from the School of Podcasting is on here. Most of my shows use this because I like up-tempo funky stuff. Sound Dogs. Sounddogs.com is where I bought this on a discontinued. I got this for next to nothing.
Oh.
And
you have the rights, like that gives you the rights to distribute it.
And I'm really glad I kept this because somewhere on here is a identification number that because I've been flagged on Google on YouTube. They're like, hey, you've been flagged for using music, and I'm like, I bought the rights to this. It's blah blah blah, and I have it somewhere in my Evernote. I even have like the order number.
And they just unflag you at that point.
They unflag me. Yeah, I'm like, I have permission, so politely bite my butt. So
on this thing we're doing Wednesday, this big live show, we're going to be playing music that would get flagged on YouTube to start things. We're just going to be Spotify music playing it, and that's probably its own problem. But I've told the producers in the back, the sound guys, like, you have to mute. If we're playing any music, you have to mute it because we're going to be live on YouTube, and we can't, this thing can't be flagged. So, when folks are coming in and you got music playing, that's fine. Just mute it. And then we'll shut that off and unmute the sound and do it that way. So, which there's some question of whether I actually don't think a Spotify license covers public, me playing the music publicly.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Because it's a whole different venue or whatever. So
yeah. Which means when I'm a DJ at a wedding, do I technically have the license to play that music?
Probably not. In theory, you're supposed to pay something to ASCAP because I know bars have to do that to have a jukebox and things like that. But I'm sure
I'm going to jail.
That's it. Somebody's the ASCAP police are going to bust in.
Well, first the Liquidy's going to murder you, and then she's going to come find me. And,
right.
That's it. It's over.
And then she's going to take over the show. That'll be it. That's funny. I'm just picturing you getting arrested in the middle of celebration. Wait, stop!
Everybody's rocking. Sorry, officer.
Yeah.
You're going to music jail. It's now the music jail is now the RCA building because they can't use it for, like, the music industry's gone. So they're reusing the RCA building in LA for that's that iconic round one, by the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's now the music prison.
Well, since I'm going on vacation again, I should have done this in the live show, but people have asked, like, how do you keep your content flowing when you go on vacation? And it's called schedule them in advance, or in this case, I can't, it's a live show. And if the live show doesn't happen, there's nothing. I guess I could do a best of, or that's one thing. A lot of people go, oh, you could always do a clip show. Think about that. That's a lot. That's more work than I think just doing the live show.
They're a lot of work.
But one of the things I'm doing today is I'm recording 2 episodes of the school. Well, between today and next Thursday, I'm recording 2 episodes of the School of Podcasting. I'm doing one for this week, and then sometime before, because I'm not coming back till next week. So over the weekend, I have to make sure everything is set to go to release the School of Podcasting on.
Or you could take a week off, Dave.
Could take a week off, but I've got enough content. I've been running into a lot of stuff. I did say, and I had somebody, it's one of those things I always say, any kind of housekeeping stuff, do at the end of your show. And I did a thing and I said, hey, just so you guys know, probably over the next couple months, the School of Podcasting may get shorter because I've got a lot of crap I'm working on. I'm also, I tend to exercise in the summer. That used to be my thing. Get fat in the winter, skinnier in the summer. And the last couple of summers, I have not done that. And I'm like getting ready to set records on my weight. And I'm like, no, I got to stop doing this. So, and I just had somebody reach out and they said, hey, wow, right, for the record, I'm right there with you. And it's not a big deal. Just keep putting out the show and, that whole 9 yards. So when in doubt, just let your audience know what's up. So Mike Rowe from The Way I Heard It, he wrote a book. He got a book deal because of his podcast, wrote a book, and he said he was trying to record episodes and write the book and said, yeah, I'm going to kill myself doing that. And so he basically said, I am taking a couple months off. I will be back. I think he said in September. And he goes, and I will have more episodes. He goes, but in the meantime, and that will coincide with the book release. But he goes, I was going to kill myself if I tried to do this.
He writes everything he podcasts.
Yeah.
That's him. Like he writes it, he reads it, he produces it. I mean, he has talked about he's got help. So he's got some help in doing it, but he does write every single episode. And so there's a lot of work to what he does. He is so good. I mean, that guy is so talented. Right. It's incredible.
I'm laughing because my stuttering life, Ashley, is asking me what my opinion on Anchor is. With their new
Facebook?
In the chat room.
Oh.
It says, what are your thoughts on Anchor? And yes, with their new send message to podcast versus SpeakPipe.
Isn't okay. Keep going.
I know Miss Eileen's going to chime in here because she's a big Anchor fan. So you could ask her that question and she'll tell you it's the best thing. I don't think, in the same way that Anchor makes starting a podcast easy, hands down, easiest way to start a podcast. That wasn't the problem. The problem is how to start a good podcast. That is not easy. And so in the same way, I think contacting me is not hard. And if they want to make it easy with a button, by all means, or you could just go to schoolofpodcasting.com/contact. I know on the Podcast Rodeo show, I put my phone number right there. Now it's my voicemail number. But I don't think that's really going to be like, oh, you know what? The minute they added that, I got 15 more messages a day. I don't really think that's the issue. And they're still free and they still control. Wait, hold on. I've got here we go. Let me just, I will read. I now hashtag Anchor. There we go. If you're happy, I'll do this in the announcer voice. Or here, this will make it even cooler. There we go. If you're happy with giving up access to your stats in Podcast Connect, if you're happy with giving up access to your stats in Stitcher.com, if you're happy having very basic stats, if you're happy with a company that hasn't made any profit or a company changing the format of your file, or if you're happy with a company that stops you from receiving email, and if you're also happy, and if you're also happy that they're always not exactly forthcoming with information, then by all means, use Anchor.fm and have fun creating your podcast. I just wanted you to go in with your eyes open, and that's not going to really change. So that's to me. I'm like, if you just want to kick the tires, I find it's funny because I move people from Anchor on a regular basis every day. And it's always interesting because it's like 2 episodes. Like they start over there and go, oh, this is kind of fun. And then they move over to.
I just wonder why Anchor has drawn such a lightning rod of people asking that question. It literally gets asked every day, maybe twice in every Facebook group around podcasting that I'm in. Like, 1, I don't know why people don't search for it and look, but 2, I don't understand why it's just Anchor. I can name 4 free podcasting services right now that are better than Anchor.
I think the biggest thing is when remember their terms of service used to be pretty horrible.
Yeah.
They have fixed that. So there you go. Dave can say nice things about Anchor. They did fix their terms of service. But they're still kind of this weird control thing that most people are like, but it is weird. Like, why aren't people going, hey, I heard about getredcircle.com.
Yeah.
To which people would go, well, they don't give you a website. It's a free service. Their stats are wonky, but to me, if somebody really wants to do a free website, Whooshka, it's a really weird name. It's spelled with like 2 or 3 O's and 3 A's or something really stupid. But I'm like, they give you, it's just like a regular web host or a regular media host. It's just free. Their players are ugly. Their website's ugly, but it's free. And their stats are very basic. And I'm like, that way, if you want to move later, complete control, Whooshka.com. So
even podcast.com is better than Anchor.
That's true.
So,
I forgot about that.
Yeah, you're kind of like, so anyways, what I don't, and by the way, no, to whoever asked that question, not picking on you in any way. I'm just wondering, that comes up so often, and why just Anchor? And it's their marketing team. Like, Anchor does such a great job, or they've done such a great job of marketing, much like SoundCloud did before them, and still continues to do, actually, in some regards. The marketing has made up for, I mean, they kind of sell vaporware in a lot of ways in what they're doing. And so it's interesting to me whenever I see someone call out Anchor. What is even crazier is people who've been podcasting for a couple years who are probably doing okay with their current provider, but have to be like, do I have to go? Like, is everybody going? It's almost like it's some FOMO. Like, do I have to go there? Am I going to miss something if I'm on Anchor? By the way, podcasters, if you have a current show and you want to try Anchor out, just do it. You don't have to move your feed there. Start uploading your MP3s to Anchor, create a show over there, get familiar with it, try it for yourself. Don't take our opinion. Dave hates it. I'm kind of middle of the road. Try it yourself. You don't have to move your feed over there. There's some things you can do. You can create it completely separate, advertise to it. It has its own RSS feed. You can try things out before you. It would be crazy if you had a podcast for a couple years and you are established, and just on somebody's recommendation or some marketing that you would move your feed to another podcast provider without trying them out. That's insane. Don't do that.
Yeah, just don't. When they say, "Would you like us to submit your show to Apple for you?" Say no. No. And when they say, "Would you like me to submit it to?" And Whooshka, by the way, is WHOOSHKAA. I knew there was something weird in their names. Double A.
And they did change that on Anchor. It used to be really aggressive, where it was like, "Hey, do you want us to be awesome?" I think it was even like that kind of terminology. Do you want us to be awesome for you? If you said yes, they were submitting to everything. Now you really got to work a little bit to get it, to make sure that they're not submitting your feed to iTunes for you. If they do, you now have a double show on iTunes, and it's not the end of the world. And you can get it fixed through Apple support, and it's not permanent. So all those things can be changed, but why? So just be careful. Get out there and try it, for God's sakes. It's free. It's literally free. You can't pay for it. Even if you wanted to, you cannot pay for Anchor.
The football dude had a question about something with radio stations, and I can't scroll up to see it anymore.
Well, hold on. Before you go, my stuttering life says I want to move my podcast to the next level, so I'll be moving to another podcast media host. That a question or an answer, and why do you need to move hosts to go to the next level? That may be a case. If you're at SoundCloud right now and you want to go to the next level, okay, that could be the case. But if you're on any of the platforms, any of the big four, you don't need to go anywhere to go. The next level is not the host provider.
Yeah.
The next level is you. Like, you need to go to the next level. It's the things you do. The host provider actually has very little to do with your success. I mean, this is one of those things that just drives me nuts, in the sense that people think, "Oh, I'm on Lipson, I'm going to be successful." No, if you suck, you're still going to suck.
Yeah. So, you just suck in more places now.
Or if you're great, I should be more positive. If you're great, you're going to be great no matter, regardless of who you're on. There's some great podcasts out there on SoundCloud, because it's you that's important, not the provider. All right, sorry. The football guy said that he was going to release the dogs. I was going to really try and hold back on that one.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Here we go. We have Glenn to chime in on us. Or maybe
don't be boring.
There we go.
Yeah. By the way, no, I'm not trying to be, again, for my is it stuttering or shuddering life. I'm not trying to pick on you on that, but it's just, we do this a lot in the podcast community, where we think the host provider is going to be something, and they really mean very little. It's just a place to put your files.
Yeah, I did an episode like the 5 things you think you're doing that will grow your audience and don't. And one of them, I don't know if one of them was your media host, but I could have put that in there. But yeah, things like, microphone. If your audio quality is not causing people to go, then a new microphone is not going to get you more downloads. The problem with this, and again, we're not picking on anybody here.
Yeah.
Nobody. The one thing I really think, and myself included in this, I don't know how, because it's our art, man. I don't know how open we are to having somebody come in and say, this thing here where you talked about this, as a new listener, I had no idea what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And when you did this thing here, it confused me. And when you played the whole song in the middle before you went to the next section, I fast forwarded through. Nobody wants to hear, here's how I would fix your show, because it's my art, man. And that song was like, and so I
love
that.
you. I love when you say it's my art, man.
It's my art, man. Come on.
That is just my favorite. That is just my favorite topic of all time. I think, this is part of being, you said this, I think you said this on one of your shows, part of the Facebook, like where it's just getting kind of worthless because you ask these kinds of questions on Facebook and you don't really get a very clear answer. Host providers, microphones is kind of that way. Titling my show, getting guests, all those kinds of things is kind of like, well, I don't know if the Facebook groups are as helpful as they used to be on some of those things.
Because they're almost too big. And there's no, I have to be careful how I say there's no, you can get advice from anybody and you have no idea, not that you need credentials or, but you could be taking advice on your podcast from somebody who's really giving out bad advice. And you're like, wow, I've never heard that before. And, it might make sense. And then the next thing you know, you're like, oh, they said I could I started 3 podcasts. They're all on the same feed. And you're like, they explained to me how that would save me money. Okay, that's true. It did save you money, but now you have 30% of your audience that only wants that show. I've had people do this, and then they want to split them out, and you go, okay, we'll realize these 2 new shows, you have to announce to your people that if you want to get those other 2 shows, you now have to subscribe over there, and your numbers are probably going to go down. It's just, you've created a giant mess. And I had somebody that was transferring over this week, and he had multiple shows on one stream or one feed, and I'm like, you sure you want to do that? Because this would be a good time to split things up. And he's like, no. And I'm like, okay. And it's podcasting. There's no rules. But to me, in a Netflix, I want what I want when I want. I'm like, multiple shows, one feed. You could have that as an option for the people that just love everything you do. Your farts smell like roses. I want it. But otherwise, I would have separate options for those people that like, well, I like the football thing, but I'm not really into baseball. That kind of thing. I've seen people, that's been advice. Oh, it'll save you money if you put them all on one stream. And I'm like, oh, that's bad advice, or at least explain the pros and cons of it. So
I want to go to Starbucks, but I don't want to pay anything for the coffee. Like I'm just is there a way, could I get sponsors for my coffee? Maybe there's a way I can get somebody else to pay for it. Oh, maybe I could bring a guest with me and make them pay for it. I mean, it's like, guys, it's just for some of these tools, just pay for them, for God's sakes. Like, stop trying to cheap this thing to death. Stop trying to make everything free. And I'm not saying spend a lot of money, but in some of these cases, you kind of get what you pay for. And
you do.
Just pay for that. I think Liquidy had a question out there for. Can you see the questions? Or no?
She's like, I would like everyone's opinion. Should I have the same voice in the, this is one of those ones, in the same voice in the open and close of my podcast, or is it okay to have different voices at the beginning and the end? This is one of those things. What's a good question? Because some people go, should I be the first voice? Like, should I say, because Dave Ramsey, where dead is king and blah, blah. I mean, he's his own voiceover guy. There's no answer to this question. There's no, it's
what sounds good. It's what sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've had different. I've done my own voiceover. I just fixed one, and this is a question I put into Facebook: is should you list your credentials? because I should have thrown it on here. I do a show called Your Podcast Consultant. It's actionable tips under 9 minutes or something like that. And I used it because I had somebody ask me the other day, how do I pick a topic for my show? And I'm like, here, episode 6. It's one answer to one question. And the beginning of that is Mike Russell. And he's going on, he's an award-winning Hall of Fame podcaster with over 2 million downloads. He's helped more people, and it was just even me. I mean, I was kind of like, God, that's kind of obnoxious. You know what I mean? When you list all like,
this is getting sarcastic now.
But then, here's the thing I did in the mall, because I was listening to this and I'm like, wait a minute, 9 minutes is like what, 540 seconds? And the intro is 30, of which is just, and Dave's farts smell like roses, and blah, just going on and on. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's like an actual fairly deep percentage of my show is just saying, he's your, and I was like, okay, we need to cut this down. So I did. I just have him now saying, welcome to Your Podcast Consultants, small tips with big value. And then I cut out, here's your host, Dave Jackson. And I was like that, and just cut out all the credentials. And I'm like, and we're actually doing part of the School of Podcasting now, because this is something that the whole intro thing is one of those things that I'm like, I don't know that there's
no way.
Because now with the whole Google thing, like the Google play buttons. Oh, by the way, that's another one that like, hey, how do I get my play buttons to work? If you go to if you Google the Audacity to Podcast, 3 play.
Oh, hopefully that's not me. Is that just Dave? Dave, are you back? Can you guys hear me or Dave? We'll give it a good thing. We're in the post show at this point. Dave just locked up. He'll be rebooting and he'll be back here in just a second. Would you guys tell me if you can are you still hearing me or seeing me? I'll give you guys a second to let me know in the chat room. Okay. Well, that's good. You guys can still hear me. Well, Dave will reboot here and come back. As he's doing that, I had some friends who let's see. So maybe Dave. Okay, got it. Chat room. Good job, guys. I had some friends who started a podcast with they just started talking. They were like, no intro, nothing. They just started talking. And then about, 8 minutes into the show, they would do their intro kind of thing. And I thought it was really, really unique. And I thought a great idea for them, right? For them to be able to, for their style, for what they were doing, they were kind of no nonsense. It was a very technical podcast. And so I think you can, when you think about building in that intro, I say be creative with it. Dave will be back here in just a second. I say I hope so, because I have I have no control over this thing. So I was like, God, I hope you're coming back.
Yeah.
Wow. Speaking of coming back, holy cow. Jeez Louise. Michael, we are not on your mic there, by the way. I think we're on your camera mic.
Okay, can you hear me at all?
Well, we can hear you, but it just sounds like you're a million miles away in a cave.
Can I fix that for him? Nope, I can mute him.
Can you on your in your browser, Michael, in your sound controls up there in the corner? Or I think it's actually I don't know what it is. Maybe this corner. There's a little thing. Can you set it to that way, because you're really loud? Dave, what happened? Well, he's trying to fix that.
I was talking about intros, and all of a sudden I just looked up and I could see through this. Again, this whole thing is very white, hazy. And all of a sudden I just noticed, and I was like, oh, now I'm frozen.
You locked up solid. I'm like, ooh, did we lose the whole thing?
Yeah, and I'm like, well, let's see what happens. And I'm like, I canceled out, and luckily it's like, hey.
Better?
No, but go ahead and ask your question, right, Michael, and we'll say,
basically just real quick. So if you have, let's say, DaveJackson.com, and you send everybody to DaveJackson.com instead of to Instagram, Facebook, blah, blah, blah. Is there an app or something you would do to where when you post something blog wise on your site that it goes out to everything?
Well, first you don't want that. That's not those sites, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. They really don't want you auto tweeting or auto posting to their sites. They'll allow you to do it. There's plugins that allow you to do it. There's you can do it, but those posts that are not native get downgraded in the algorithms, so they don't show up as often. So if you're trying to promote things, it's still the best way to go into the apps, create the post. Now you can copy and paste all you want. This is what I do. I just copy and paste it and throw it in there. But you definitely don't want to take a post and blast it everywhere. The social networking sites they're not promoting that. Dave, you want to add anything to that bit?
Yeah, I the only thing I can think of is Buffer, and I'm with Jim. They typically kind of frown on that. And in fact, I was really surprised that you can now, I haven't gone through it, but if I wanted to, I could set up Buffer to post to Instagram. And I just haven't done it because it seemed to make
it's messy.
Yeah, it was like you have to do this and put your right side in and shake it all about. And I was like, I'm not.
Michael, you can use it. You can use like Buffer and stuff to schedule things, but the kind of there were a bunch of apps for a while. There were a bunch of apps for a while that were just blasting stuff to everywhere, and a lot of the networks didn't appreciate that, so they downgraded when they hit.
So basically, your followers are only going to be on 3 or 4 anyway.
It depends where your audience is. Like, if you're tweeting in the desert and no one's there, should you still be tweeting? Like,
right.
If your audience isn't there, don't fill up Twitter with unnecessary stuff that you're doing. I think any place you can create a conversation, this is the lost art of a conversation. I think any place you can go and get a conversation going about what you're doing, not just posting into the ether meaningless links. They're not meaningless, but you know what I mean. Start with a conversation and get people, add something original. Don't just blast into the ether of, Yeah,
that doesn't work. Yeah, I know. I think Ray Edwards, he said something just the other day that a lot of the social media stuff is going to go more toward the conversation, not toward just linking from hey, look at this. It's going to be more toward the conversation.
Yeah, listen.
Socials want. So that means engagement. That means people show up. So
humans have always been about communication and about conversation, not about information. And yes, information works. Just blasting things out. We know information works a little bit by clickbait, but the best engagement you can get is conversation. If you can get people talking about it in a positive and meaningful way, that's the very best engagement you'll ever get. It takes longer. It's harder to do the bigger your audience gets. But that's what's important. You're here in Omaha with me. I've got all these strengths coaches here in town this weekend getting ready for this conference that's on Monday. And it's important for me to spend my time around them. I'll be out tonight, tomorrow night, hanging out with them for face-to-face connections to them. Because this is my meetup time. I don't get them. Nobody comes to Omaha any other day except for the College World Series and this, right?
Yeah, that's about it. Or for the flood work, because there's a lot of flooding.
Yeah. Well, and so it's important that I'm out in front of them, starting conversations. Dave, you go ahead, Michael.
Go ahead,
Dave. You do a local meetup to do this kind of thing, right? Where it's important to have those relationships you make at the meetup are probably way more important and way more engaging than just your average listener, right?
Oh yeah. And it got me on TV. So
yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm trying to imagine Dave when he goes to Utah and he puts all that sunscreen on and he gets like in a sandstorm. Wouldn't he look like a sprinkled donut, you think?
I think so. Yeah.
A really delicious one.
Yeah. I don't have that in here, but I actually I put them on yesterday. I have these, it's weird, these kind of thin shirts, but they're long sleeved and they're supposed to be like 50 PF or whatever the
SPF.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I'll be doing that and the funky hat and
you want to protect yourself, my friend.
I'm the only person in my family that tans because I've got a family full of redheads. And they're all just, and I thought of Dave the other day. I told my daughter, because when she's doing karate, she goes, yeah, I'm kind of white. And I said, well, I got a friend of mine who's actually translucent. That'd be Dave,
That's it.
You said that a few times, but yeah.
I'm happy if I was out in Oregon. I actually have almost a flesh tone going on. And So that's my goal. I believe my father was a Smurf, I think is kind of how that happened or something. I'm pretty light blue at times, but
blend into the sky.
Yeah. So yeah, I was actually thinking of taking shorts, and I was like, that's just a dumb idea. I would just need buckets of sunscreen.
If you're hiking, it's probably not as bad. Michael, thanks for jumping in here. Anything else?
No problem. Good seeing you guys. Be safe.
All right, man. All right. Yeah. Go Big Red.
That's it.
All right. We'll see you.
Do we want to hear Obnoxious Dave?
Sure.
Okay. I think this will work.
Okay.
So this is where I would say what's on the show. This week we're talking about horses.
Welcome to Your Podcast Consultant. Small lessons with big value. With more than a decade of experience and millions of downloads, this Hall of Fame podcaster is a featured speaker, author, and mentor to thousands.
It just goes on and on.
Now, he wants to work with you. He's your podcast consultant, Dave Jackson.
So
that's pretty great. I like it.
It goes on, but yeah, now the new one just goes, it stops right exactly where you said it. And I'm like, and then it goes right to, here's your host, Dave Jackson. I was like, let's just cut out the author, speaker, blah, blah, blah.
You could put that at the end, though.
Yeah, that's actually what I'm going to do.
Yeah. That'd be good. That'd be a really good one to put at the end, because then they'll listen to it once when they need it, and then last times they can just go. I get to the end of a lot of podcasts I listen to every week, and I go 30-30, and it's done.
Yeah,
I don't need to hear it again. I'm fine with it.
Finally found out why Chris Curran plays a whole song at the end of his show, and I knew it was this before he said it. He plays drums and guitar on it, and I'm like, there's some. I said there's got to be something on this song that. It's behind the scenes, a special thing. And I heard him on his show. I felt so bad. I needed to send him something on what my thing on Podcast Movement was. And I told him, I said, I had something come up, and then I was getting ready to go to Georgia, and I'm like, I'll get this to you before I leave. And then I get home and I'm listening to his episode. He goes, hey, everybody sent this in except Dave Jackson. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Hey, so say you want to use AC/DC's Thunder, right?
Yes.
You want to use that song. And you do a cover of it. Can you play it? I think you can.
No.
Don't
have permission of the songwriter, which would be.
I think covers are different. I
know they do them all the time on YouTube.
I think it falls into that interpretation clause, where you are creating an interpretation of it. It's not in its exact form.
Yeah, I mean, I would see where some of the We
should ask Gordon that question. That would have been good when you had Gordon on, because I've never heard anybody ask that question legally. If it's a cover, I mean, I see covers on YouTube all the time. They don't
all
block
the
them.
time, yeah.
They don't block them.
And I know, that's in it, because I know when I had a theme song made for one of my shows, and he just said, "Give me a couple of songs that you kind of want it to sound like." And then he made something completely different.
Yeah, completely different. Or if you change one note, I mean, can you play Thunder? Can you play that?
Oh yeah.
Can you play that?
Yeah.
So could you play one different note or make it?
Wait, I can remember. Yeah. So if I went, it's now different,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Or even if you did, I wonder if you did it exactly, but you did it.
Or if I did different string.
Now that sounds like a hillbilly.
Yeah, it does.
What if you did an acoustic version of it, strumming it instead of?
Yeah, doesn't.
Well, Michael, that's the question. Michael Bunny says, "Does that mean we can use cover music in the podcast?" And that's my question. I'm not trying to be facetious. And listen, I'm a big advocate of no to everything commercial in your podcast. But I think covers are different.
Remember Ice-T?
Yeah.
And he said it was different because he went. He goes that extra ding.
Extra ding in there.
Makes it different. Like, no. Nice try.
So Daniel says cover music is still copyrighted and potentially requiring license from even more people than the original. Yeah. So I know you're saying that, Daniel, but I don't know. Maybe YouTube can't catch this. Like I just watched this.
That might be
do covers. She has hundreds of covers. She's the drummer,
right?
And she's playing the actual track. So it's the actual vocals. Everything except the drums is being played. She's been doing this for like 4 years on YouTube. No takedowns. Like it's working. So yeah, I don't know. This should be a good one. Nobody's a lawyer here. You're not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. Daniel's not a lawyer. We should if you ever next time you're talking to Gordon, or maybe we should send him a little note and say, hey, what about covers? Because you guys didn't really talk about covers. We always talk about original work. What about covers? I think those are different.
I accidentally said iced tea.
Oh, it was Vanilla Ice. Well,
just a slight difference. Iced tea.
That's super great.
Men are like dogs. They want to smell it and slam it. My favorite iced tea quote of all time. I was like, what? Did he just say that? I miss his podcast. It was interesting. Talk about an interesting open. They would basically they're like, if you are offended by words like sh and mother, it was just like, then don't listen to this podcast. That's how they started off the show. And I was like, well, that's straight and to the point. Yeah. He's too busy being a star and all that other things.
Miss Eileen says the record label gets paid when people watch her videos. Interesting. I'm going to dig into this a little bit. I don't know if I believe everybody.
I believe the answer is still no. I just think it's a case that they're not being, for whatever reason, they're not being taken down. Because it's always been, you need the permission of the performer. Well, now I'm the performer, the songwriter, that's the one we're missing, and the person who has the rights to the recording. Well, there is no recording. I'm making the recording. So it's the songwriter part that makes it tricky. Like I would need permission from AC/DC, I think, to use it. I think that's I
don't think you do.
Yeah, we'll
for cover. Yeah. I don't think you're.
Oh, you can cover it, but I'm saying using it as to use it on a podcast.
Yeah,
it's like,
and maybe that's the difference between YouTube and the podcast too, is that YouTube is still streaming and it can't be downloaded. And this is in the original music dilemma that we had. The hang up why we're streaming is different than downloading is in the licensing on it is because downloading is so different. It's a physical copy on a device somewhere as opposed to streaming where it doesn't live there. Right. So the laws are a little bit different on those.
Yeah.
And that was the big hang up. The download piece is what hung up music for a lot of years when they were first starting to do that. And Apple kind of Apple broke through that to get that deal done with the distributors and with the labels and all those other things to say, okay, we're going to figure out a way to get them paid.
We have to Google the Verve. Steven is saying, he says there's big music news. The Verve was an English rock band formed in Wigan in 1990. What's the big news? They split up, maybe? Steven, what are we missing? I know the Verve. I think. Wait, no bidder, just sweet. The Rolling Stones give royalties to the Verve. Okay, so this came out May 23rd. After more than 20 years, the Rolling Stones and the Verve have resolved a sour dispute over the authorship of the song "Bittersweet Symphony." The Verve's frontman and co-founder Richard Ashcroft announced on Wednesday. Ashcroft explained the change since it received a lifetime achievement honor. Blah, 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 blah. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards signed over all publishing for Bittersweet Symphony, which was a truly kind of magnanimous thing for them to do. See, now we need to hear that song. Okay. Ashcroft struck a clangingly different chord about the final dispute. Blah, blah, blah. See, now I need to hear both songs. But apparently there was the thing that's interesting is I would think the Stones did the first version. The Verve's, okay. The tune's authorship was challenged. The Verve's lead singer wrote the lyrics, but the song's instrumentals leaned heavily on a version of the Stones' The Last Time, specifically on an orchestral arrangement recorded in 1965. So apparently the Stones were suing them. I'm not sure. Interesting. But I'll have to read that later. Because I actually have to leave soon because I have a haircut in 45 minutes.
Ooh.
Yes.
A transfer. We're not going to see it for 2 weeks. You're going to get a haircut, and I'm not going to see it for. I can't say happy haircut for.
No.
2 weeks.
It's what's interesting is it's this thing here keeps just getting down in my face, and it doesn't look horrible now, but we're right at the spell where it just starts to do whatever the heck it wants. So, yes, Daniel says that music is even more complicated than pictures. That is true.
He'd used a picture example in the music we were talking about. I'm like, I think pictures come under a whole different. I mean, they've got a whole different set of rules. Some similar, but I think they have.
Yeah.
When we think about images that are being displayed, that's a whole different set.
And also, Weird Al typically gets permission because he couldn't. I forget who he said. There was somebody he wanted to cover. I want to say it was Prince, and Prince didn't want him to use one of his songs, which to me, I think that's like a rite of passage. Oh, here we go. Daniel's got a link to LegalZoom.
Yeah, I think I'm reading the same one he's reading. All songs published in 1922 or earlier are in the public domain.
Hello, my baby.
They're no longer, so you can use any of those if it was, if the song was published in 1922 or earlier, you can just rip those right off. And Bohemian Rhapsody, right? That's an old song, right? So it's it's Rhapsody, right? Didn't Bach
exactly?
Didn't Bach write Bohemian
here
Rhapsody?
So the Verve used a chord that was based on an orchestral arrangement of a Rolling Stones song. As such, the Verve has never made money off of it, and the Stones have. Interesting. Is this the one that goes? Okay, never mind. Don't sing, Dave. But on the other hand, you also want to go. Excuse me, Mick Jagger. You have more money than God, and you guys keep touring, and your tickets are $90. Like.
So in this LegalZoom article, it does say once a musical work has been published, anyone can record a cover version of the song by obtaining a mechanical license. The song is published when copies or recordings are distributed to the public for sale or rent. Live performance is not a publication. So you can perform it live without a mechanical license. That's what that tells me. Now, that didn't answer our podcasting question because this is not necessarily a live event. A live event is when we're all together in person virtually. That's a live event.
See, this is not interesting because it's hard to have a live event right now without somebody recording it.
I know. If it shows up, yeah.
I know comedians are now taking your phones at the door. They have like a whole door check thing now for your phone.
Yeah, they check it in, put it in a secure box.
Yeah.
The song's copyright owner must give you a mechanical license. If you pay a royalty fee based on estimated revenue from your cover song, you can obtain a mechanical license through the Harry Fox agency. There you go. Thanks, Harry Fox. The mechanical license only covers the audio portion of your YouTube cover. To post video along with the song, you need a synchronization license, also called sync license. Thanks for the shortening that. You must negotiate a sync license with the copyright holder. The copyright owners must grant mechanical licenses. They are not required to give you a sync license, nor is there a set fee for the license. Interesting.
Yeah.
The good news is that many publishers have already made agreements with YouTube that allow their songs. I think this is the key. They have already made agreements with YouTube to allow their songs to be used in exchange for a portion of, I think this is what Miss Eileen was saying, for a portion of the ad revenue generated on YouTube. You can find out if there is already an agreement in place for that song you want to use by contacting the music publisher directly, which means, Dave, I could play if the agreement's in place and the ad revenue's turned on and I wanted to use it in my podcast and I only played it through YouTube. I think I could put Thunder. No, Thunder's on the agreement. I think I could put Thunder in my podcast, but then is it a podcast?
And then not put it in.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able in the feed. Yeah, that's a whole different. That's a whole different thing.
But if you're using the Rodecaster and you've got separate tracks, you could easily take it out. But it would be on YouTube.
So
interesting.
I know you got to get a haircut. Let me one more conclusion.
Right.
So if I want to play this live rock and roll music, and in this thing we're doing Wednesday, that's live.
Yeah.
that's a live event, so that's covered. If it's on the list on YouTube for the ad revenue bit, that's covered. And technically, I should be able to play it in both places. Although that was a cover song, that was a big stretch. Okay, well, enough. This is why we leave the legal stuff to Gordon.
This is why Gordon makes the big bucks.
We're not lawyers. We never pretended to be lawyers. We didn't even stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Have a great haircut, Dave.
Thank you. He's here all week.
Try the veal.
Yeah, I'm as much as I'm excited to go to Utah, I am kind of bummed. I miss doing the show on a regular basis.
I do too. I'm
kind of glad that when I come back, I don't know where I'm going after Utah.
Hey, take vacations when I'm doing this Get Hip stuff and I'm not around on Saturdays. Maybe we could coordinate that a little bit.
When's your Get Hip thing?
Doesn't start till September.
Oh, okay.
Don't wait. Take a vacation.
I'll just do
September, all of October, 1st of November. That's the 6 weeks I'm always.
That's right. Yeah.
That I'm out. So although I think I'll be around a little bit more this year, my boss is encouraging me not to spend as many Saturdays at work. So I might get some help with that. All right, go get a haircut.
All right, man.
We'll see you, friend. See you in 2 weeks later.
Right.
Be safe. Bye.
This